Welcome to Frequency. I'm Jenny Field.
And I'm Chuck Gose. Frequency is your go-to for real talk about comms, culture, and employee experience beyond the buzzwords and straight to what matters. And what matters, Jenny, is it is 2026. We are back with our very first episode of the year. It is good to be back. One of the things I've learned over the last couple of weeks, Jenny, I knew this about myself long before this. I do not like routine things, but I need routines.
Yes.
And doing this podcast was a bit part of that weekly routine. So I've missed having that as part of it. So it is good to be back. I would ask you about how your holidays were, but I feel like I lived it through Instagram. Jenny, I feel like I knew exactly who you were hanging out with, what you were doing, your pictures of your feet, trains, all the above. I felt like I had a really good idea of how your holidays were.
Yeah, I love my Instagram stories. I can't stop it. And it's nice. People kind of follow along, and I had a lovely time. Went to see the seaside, hung out with the family. Yeah, ate loads of food. I mean, you literally saw everything. So yes, it was lovely.
I did.
Yeah,
I love the puzzle of the photo of you doing the puzzle, doing a puzzle, doing a puzzle. Like, yeah. I have questions about that we'll save for another time.
Okay.
But one of the things during our break that we were talking about was, it's a bit of a cliche, kind of like the wrapped stuff we were talking about when we ended the year.
Yeah.
Of people doing like these ins and outs for like, what are you leaving out in 2025? What's coming in for 2026? And I would say, like a lot of content, I was mostly disappointed in what people were creating because, like all things, whether it's trends or these things, it's always very self-serving.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's like, out bullying people in 2025 and being kind. Well, yeah, you shouldn't have been bullying people in 2025, right? Like that. Come on, like that's we know that. There was one though that I sent with you that I pulled up here that I did want to give credit to that I felt was actually somewhat helpful and honest. And Gab Ferry, I believe is her name. She now is on her own, but like it was at Bumble and Slack in the comms world. She had things like out, like vanity metrics, AI fear, manual reporting, winging it alone. I'm like, okay, those are respectful things. And then in like AI operations, reporting to the CEO, navigating with community. I'm like, okay, those are kind of good, helpful, guiding things to give people some guidance. So we thought, let's just do a list of things that we think people should be leaving behind in 2025. So I'm just going to run through some of these. It's a bit of an exhaustive list. We clearly want to leave a lot behind. But like quote unquote authentic leadership that's really scripted, we know we've got to leave that stuff behind. Loneliness is a comms problem to solve. Return to office as a culture strategy. Generational friction as an excuse for why things aren't good. AI treated as a tech problem instead of trust. AI will fix everything mentality. Also, the AI will ruin everything mentality. AI treated as a tool rollout instead of a culture shift. Meaningless company values. I wish we could say that's going to be left behind, but I have a feeling that's going to stick around forever. This might be my favorite one. Corporate authority parading as true leadership. Change fatigue treated like an employee weakness instead of a leadership signal. Transparency treated as information sharing instead of meaning sharing. Blaming managers for disengagement while setting them up to fail. And then a word we are absolutely leaving behind, but I guess we're kind of bringing it in to 2026, but we're never saying this phrase again. Human sustainability. So those are some of the things that we suggest all of you leave behind back in 2025. Jenny, what do you have lined up for us this week?
Oh, I love those. And I really enjoyed that exercise of going through what do you want to leave behind in 2025. It was quite cathartic. So we have a bevy of LinkedIn articles to discuss today. We've got stuff from the science behind open plan offices to whether buzzwords are actually helpful, to one of my latest articles on the trends, your favourite topic, shaping internal comms and the workplace for 2026. But we're going to start with employee happiness. Now, if you've listened to us before and you've heard any previous episodes, you know that I take a bit of an issue with the belief that organisations or leaders are responsible for employee happiness, because they're not. So when I saw this article from Forbes, I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting. So the headline is, "New data shows the surprising payoff of employee happiness." It says new research reveals a surprising predictor of long-term stock growth, and it's not pay or perks, it's employee happiness. Now, Irrational Capital analysed years of public and private data and found that companies where people feel energised, respected and supported are the ones that consistently outpace their peers. Now, it goes on to say that S&P 500 firms in the top tier for employee happiness outperformed those in the bottom tier by nearly 6 percentage points over an 11-year period. But let's be clear on what they're saying here, where they're saying that the people who feel energised, respected and supported are happy. So that's kind of the root of the word happiness in this, and I think that's important to call out. The research highlights 6 factors that most powerfully predict employee happiness and stock performance. We've got innovation, which they said is the strongest predictor of employee happiness and long-term performance. They describe innovation as employees are more motivated when their ideas are welcomed and their perspectives influence how work gets done. I'm not sure that that is innovation. Direct management, that refers to clear, honest and timely communication from leaders. I've never heard it referred to as direct management, but there we go. Organisational effectiveness, how well a company removes obstacles, slow people down. Engagement, shaped by whether people feel supported in their growth and development. Emotional connection, reflecting a depth and quality of relationships people have with one another. And organisational alignment, so when a company's external mission matches the reality of its internal culture. Now, Chuck, are we confusing happiness with the basic expectations of leadership in terms of focusing on people feeling energised, respected and supported?
I think we're confusing happiness with just simple being content with things. Because honestly, without getting political, I don't know that with everything going on in the world right now, I don't know how anybody can be happy if you're remotely dialed in to what's happening around the world. Like I saw this Instagram post that I just want to add behind me where it's like someone has this like days since US has been an embarrassment to the world, and it says 0 and they wipe it out and put another 0 on it. Like, especially as an American, I don't know how you can really be that. We're going to get back into the work stuff. To your point, this is the baseline stuff. This is what people just should be doing. You could be doing all of these things at an exemplary level, and your employees still might not be happy because of all this other stuff that is happening out there in the world. So happiness might be this really great target that's completely out of your control. And I was thinking about it also from like the old consulting racy format thing. Like your employer is not responsible for your happiness. They're not accountable. And I know the other C and the I don't really fit, but like they impact it though. Like what's happening at work will absolutely impact your happiness, no differently than what's happening outside of work. So I think that, to your point, this is the baseline. This is what leaders should be doing. It's clear, though, that the ones that are doing these things, whatever word you want to call it, is absolutely having an impact on performance.
Yeah. And what do you think about this number 2, which is direct management, which refers to clear, honest and timely communication from leaders? Like, as a phrase, direct management, when I read what it meant, I was like, oh, I've never really considered.
I mean, it feels like that's communication is part of that, but not wholly.
Yeah.
That, I don't know if it's mislabeled or whatever. I get it's an ingredient, but not the whole.
Yeah,
there.
Why would you not just have communication? It just feels a bit strange.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be the one. So yeah, I was thrilled with reading that article. So moving on into trends, which I know is your favourite topic. So I've written an article on LinkedIn, which is called "What are the trends shaping internal comms in the workplace in 2026?" Now, I do go on to say in the article that these are not trends. They are insights and predictions at best. But basically every year I read as many reports and articles as I can find about the trends, and then I try and summarise that into an article on LinkedIn. And I read about 15 different reports or articles. And the article breaks it into 3 categories. So we've got the main themes that are impacting the workplace. Then we've got sort of practical and tactical insights. And then there's some sort of bigger thinking stuff that links to the future of the profession. And what was really clear to me in reading all of the reports and articles is this split. So this kind of big thinking, profession changing predictions, and then the tactical, practical insights for the day to day. You can really see that in the articles and the reports that people have produced, because we've got things like short form video and email and these sorts of things. But alongside that, we've got some big stuff about time being the new commodity at work rather than pay. So how do we adjust the employee experience to be more flexible? So there's lots of stuff in there. And it feels like this year is possibly going to be the year that there is this split in the profession, because the question I come to at the end of the article is, does internal communication really describe what the function does in organisations today? A topic we've touched on in the podcast already, because I've worked with organisations to help them build credible leaders, to communicate clearly and build cultures that thrive. But talking about working in internal communication doesn't quite feel like the right label. And I think that's part of the split. You've got the bigger cultural leadership stuff and then the day-to-day. So my question for you, which you're probably going to answer something different, but are we going to see a split in the profession in 2026?
Well, answer your question. No, we're not going to see a split. But let me get back to, first off, I love how you acknowledge how much I adore these trends posts. And then we kick off the first episode of the year, not just talking about trends, but an article that you also wrote.
Yes.
About trends. So yes, there is not going to be a split. I think this is the challenge of any profession out there. There's that day-to-day tactical stuff that you have to deal with. Then there's the big picture stuff. And I think this just shows where individual minds are. Here's what I want to do, though. If we're going to do these trends posts, I would much rather see a predictions post, because then I think you can come back and tell people if they were right or wrong on these things. I'm really
happy. We'll have this conversation next year. That's fine.
I love, there's a gentleman, Scott Galloway, that does these annual predictions every year, and they're oftentimes very transactional, very detailed, very business focused. When he does his predictions the next year, he goes back and talks about where he was right and where he was wrong. There's no accountability to the trend stuff. It's really, to me, it's marketing fluff that's out there that might get some people talking, but it's not impacting the day-to-day things of what people are doing at work.
And I think that's why I started doing this every year, is reading all the stuff, because a lot of it comes from tech firms. So you've got that sort of bias in terms of what they're saying. And it is just based on what people think is going to happen. Some of them are tech firms who have got different insights from different industries, and some are consulting firms. So you've got different agendas for what these predictions and things are going to be. And that's why I think it's important to look across them and see what's really coming up again and again. Because somebody commented on my LinkedIn about the readiness gap. And that's going to be a big theme. And I was like, that comes up in one post, and that's from Gallagher, who are doing a state of the sector report where they're going to talk about the readiness gap. So that's interesting, because someone else has pulled that in. So there's definitely some interesting stuff out there. And I think you're right. A lot of it is linked to their own agenda and their marketing desire and some of those things. But when there's,
I like the idea, whether it's part of frequency or I do it as part of ecology, going out to our broader community out there and say, give me a really good prediction.
Yeah.
Like that you want to be held accountable to. And I'll be curious to see how many get offered up. Because if they're not real, I'm not going to count it.
Yeah. So you should do it, because in our last episode to wrap the year, we did our 5 predictions that came from AI. So we've got those. If you then did it with ecology around, give me your predictions for the year, then we could bring those two together next year to do a bit of a review. Because I do feel like there is a bit of a split, whether it becomes this year or if it comes in the future. To your point of, every function has that in terms of the tactical stuff and then the bigger thinking stuff. The difference is there's just such clarity in roles of who's doing that in some of the other functions. And I'm not sure in comms we've got that clarity of role in job title and split and how that works, that it's clear who's doing what. And I wonder maybe it's a job title thing that's going to shift. I don't know. I'm going to move us on from your favourite topic into the topic about buzzwords. And this was another LinkedIn post from Rob Briner, who shared some of his views on some 2025 HR work behaviour buzzwords. He's just titled it, "Are Buzzwords Bad?" And his post was shared by Bob Sutton, who's the author of The Friction Project, which is a book I'm currently listening to. But Rob's post, I really, really liked it. So he said when he was looking at it, his initial thoughts were that some of the recent buzzwords were a bit silly and distracting, but there's a bit more to it. And he says one reason that buzzwords are silly is that they imply some completely new behaviour that's been discovered. So he talks about quiet quitting, and then says, haven't employees always chosen sometimes to do only what's required but no more? He also talks about task masking. The expression sort of look busy, here comes the boss, has been found on an ancient Egyptian tomb. So some of these things that we think are these new big buzzwords actually have existed for a really long time. He's asking the question, does it really matter? And he says it does. From a practical perspective, if you think you found something completely new, then you'll also believe that there won't be any existing evidence or theory that could help you to manage or deal with it. And I think that's where that sort of chaos and fear and anxiety can kind of churn through. He says another problem is that buzzwords give the impression that the user has expertise or authority. Human sustainability, and it seems more likely that keen users of buzzwords may in fact lack expertise and should not be treated as authorities. I really enjoyed his post, but he then goes on to explain more, basically saying that there's quite a lot that we need to do to distinguish sort of buzzwords from other stuff. So he's saying that they're not new, they've existed since around 1946. How do you distinguish a buzzword between fad or jargon or slang? So how do we kind of, separate those things out? And also he's saying that while buzzwords have negative consequences, they may also have some benefits, encouraging people to get interested in something new and maybe taking action. So he's got a bit of a, going on both sides, but he ends the article saying, I can see that buzzwords are interesting and more complicated than I thought, but I still think that overall they're probably more harmful than helpful. So Chuck, I know you also love a buzzword, helpful or harmful?
I agree with you. It feels like he's playing both sides of the game here. He's on both teams. I'm going to disagree with him and say, I think they're probably more helpful than harmful. I would say probably more buzzwords are harmful, but I think sometimes you can give a feeling a name when people can actually identify it as something, and then people become aware of it. Then that's where I think it is helpful. I think the harmful ones, there might be people out there. I mean, I used to joke when I focused more back in like the social media marketing stuff, I'd be like, oh, you clearly read the Mashable article about that thing because that's all somebody talked about in a meeting. Is that really harmful in the grand scheme of business? No. Does it hurt them? Probably. So I think I think the more interesting, maybe from a grammar standpoint, is the jargon versus slang versus buzzwords. Like, there's a lot of people will say, oh, you have to get rid of corporate jargon. Well, no, sometimes jargon is a unifier. Like if there's a term that your community understands that unifies them, even if someone else on the outside doesn't. So I don't know if helpful or harmful is the more helpful question to it. It's just more, should you be using them or not? And to his point around like the quiet quitting, of course, people have been doing that forever. Task masking, I think was another one. Of course, people doing that forever. But all of a sudden you become, that's a name, I'm doing that. And now it gives me a chance to reflect back on my own behavior.
Yeah, it's interesting because from, based on his article and what you're saying, it's that the positive side that it shines a light on something and it makes people reflect and look at it. His point about the fact that if you think you found something new, you'll believe there's no evidence to help you or anything to help you manage or deal with it, I think is quite interesting from a workplace culture perspective. And when we see so much content now in terms of Instagram and TikTok and the news and wherever you're getting your stuff, if you suddenly hear something, it might make you feel like, oh, this is so new and how do we deal with it and what do we do? And it throws up that chaos, whereas actually it doesn't need to do that. It's been around for a long time and there's loads of strategies for dealing with it. And so I'm a bit mindful of that in terms of the chaos agent that a buzzword could be and what that implication could be for either individuals or organizations.
Well, I'll give an example that I think people might not even think of as a buzzword that it once was and was not, was the term employee experience. I would say within the last 10 to 15 years, that kind of became a thing. That became something people grab into. Employees have been having experiences since there were employees.
Yeah.
But until a name was given to it, did it give a focus and attention to it, maybe some positive, some negative. But I don't think people would call employee experience a buzzword anymore. But at one point, it very much was.
So the last article we've got today is another LinkedIn post, and this was basically called "The Open Office is a Lie." And it was a post from Marcin Pilacek. which hopefully I've said correctly, on LinkedIn. And he shared quite a lot of data and insight about the open office format being unhelpful for work. Basically, the research tells us that face-to-face interaction declined by 70% in open offices. 8 minutes of open office noise increases negative mood by 25% and sweat response by 34%. 62% increase in sick days for open office workers, and background chatter impacts performance. It's linked to some research on the irrelevant speech effect, which demonstrates that background speech impairs cognitive performance, particularly for tasks requiring short-term memory and rehearsal, because it interferes with your working memory process. So the case being put forward in the article is that really it's all about money, and that traditional offices typically required about 200 to 250 square feet per employee, while modern open office are kind of 60 to 150. So we've got a lot less space and therefore saving lots of money. So I wanted to talk about this because the return to office is coming into force for a lot of people this year. I know a lot of people I am friends with are now having the mandate of everyone back to the office, but having to wait for the office to be remodelled in order to accommodate everybody coming back because no one's thought about it. So if we're thinking about the office in 2026 and open plan doesn't work, I suppose my question is, what should the office look like in 2026?
Well, before we get to that question, I want to, do we know how they measured sweat response? An increase in that response.
So I do know, because I'm going to have to get it up. Hang on. So I do know because I put the article, well, I have not verified any further, but I put the article into chat because I was like, there was no, what's the word, sources or anything for the stuff he was sharing. I actually think I used Claude. Hang on, all the different AIs going on.
Well, regardless, I'm going to start making up different responses. I'm going to start making up different responses to things. Let's talk about sweat response. Anyway, I think the point here is everything comes back to money. It always comes back to money, but they try to sell it as something else. So when people were in offices and there was open offices, like, wait, we can save money if we put everybody in cubicles and decrease the space, but we're going to tell people it's because it's better for collaboration and you get to see everybody and blah, blah, blah. No different than the return to office. It always comes back to money. That is the ultimate driver. And I wish leadership would just be honest about that.
Yeah, and you've talked about that all the way through in terms of that financial piece. I suppose I have found the source of it. It's from theconversation.com, who did a piece of research. It's making me wonder what the modern office needs to look like, because I do think that does need to be different. If you're asking people to come back in a more flexible way, and everyone's talking about the fact there's no meeting rooms, or, why am I going into the office when I could be at home? So they need to look different. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean they need to be bigger and there needs to be more money. But is this a sunk cost fallacy that you've invested the money, so let's get people back, and then they're going to spend more money because of the electricity and everything else? Or do we just reimagine the office entirely and rebuild completely different ones, because we know that open office doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for a long time, and the office now needs to be something different anyway?
Yeah, again, but it's going to come back to money. It's going to come back to, if we can do something different that's less expensive, but we're going to sell people because we're going to get them to believe that it's something else and this is the impact. Like, I would love to see an honest, and maybe that's out there somewhere, like workplace design. What is truly where you have some flexibility, but some structure? Like, what does that look like? Because then you have to think about all the different working styles that everyone have. How do you combine that? It's a very tricky situation. It might not exist. You might be chasing the perfect office design forever, but I would rather them chase that than try to sell people on something they know does not work.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's been the story of 2025, isn't it? Which we've tried to do so many things that haven't worked, like the well-being stuff has been proven that doesn't work. If you ignore that completely, it's going to have massive consequences. So maybe this is the year that we stop ignoring the data, the insight, and start listening to it and actually taking some action on the back of that, which would be lovely, wouldn't it? Right, those are our articles for our first episode back. So we're on to our freakouts for this episode. I'm going to go first because my freak out is my Wankernomics book, which for anyone unfamiliar with Wankernomics, it's a duo, comedy duo who have done a lot of sketches about the sort of corporate world and how we communicate and what we say and what we do. And they published a book, which I was given at Christmas, which is just really making me laugh. So it's all the little things that we do at work that sound a bit wanky, essentially is what they're saying. They do explain what wanker means in the front, which I thought was actually very helpful for people that might not know. But it's made me become very aware of the way people talk on things like LinkedIn. And there's been a few examples, and I said this to you the other day. I'm going to start my own notes of Wankernomics because I keep seeing stuff on LinkedIn now. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I'm not going to share all of them because some of them have been related to some of my content. But I did see this one yesterday, which is a good example of what I mean. So somebody had posted saying, in 2026, you probably don't need a communication strategy. What you might need is a corporate and executive reputation plan. That is an example of what you would find in the book. It's really good. It's making me laugh. And it's making me laugh at ourselves. And I think sometimes that's a good way to start the year. So I'm enjoying that.
We need to do that. I think I sent you one the other day that somebody posted. I think it's people trying to be so far out in front.
Yeah.
And I think that the term was composable software.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Like, when I'm even reading this and they write about it as if everybody knows what that is. And I feel like I'm pretty up on things and I'm like, I don't even understand what this term means. So I think about, I think it's good to reflect back on our own language and the things that we say, and we say them because we think it's going to make us sound good when it makes us sound, to use some of your language, like a wanker.
Yeah. So even on a call yesterday, I think I said to somebody at the end, you can do that if you want to, but that's not an ask from me. And I was like, who talks like that? No one talks like that. What I should have said you can do that if you want, but you don't need to. Like, that's a normal way of saying it. But this whole, is that an ask? And I'm clearly been in that environment where people have been saying it, but once you hear it or see it, you can't stop it. So it's bringing me some joy and a little bit of cringiness on my own behalf. Well,
again, self-reflection is good.
It's always good.
Self-reflection is good.
It's always good. So what is your freak out today?
So my freak out, thank you for letting me go last on this, is over the holidays, it was a lovely time. Was good to step away, unplug, even came back, and I couldn't figure out why my keyboard wasn't working. It's because it died on me. So that's not my freak out. My freak out is that a couple of days after Christmas, we said goodbye to our dog, Scotty. And for those that, if you don't know what my wife and I do, we rescue senior dogs. They tend to be senior pitties out there for people that like pit bulls. And we give them their best life possible. They've typically come to us where people have failed them in their life. We get them, we do everything in our power to give them their best life. And so Scotty, when he came to us, he was a cruelty confiscate. He was surrendered weighing 25 pounds, skin and bones, through a rescue, came to us. He was a very healthy 75 pounds. So he just, and I was trying to think about why this one has felt different to me. And it's because I also lost a friend. And thinking about him, who would be in this corner over here, just such a loss for us. So I am grieving not a dog, but a friend. So that's my freak out.
Yeah. And it's a lovely freak out. And I'm really glad that you've brought him into the podcast because there's been a few times where we've been recording and before we turn on and I can hear him sort of behind you, or he might have a little growl, or you might be like, he needs to go for a walk. And he's been there the whole way through for us, just listening, learning so much. Let's be honest. His dog knowledge of the world of work has come on 20-fold in the last sort of 8 months. So I'm really pleased you shared that. And I know we chatted a bit over the break and I'm so sorry for your loss because I know it's a big one, but I also know that there'll be probably another one that comes into your life and you will make that dog's life brilliant in the same way that you did for Scotty.
We will. We always said we're going to take a little break.
Yeah.
And these dogs seem to find us. So when that time is right, we will absolutely welcome our home and bring in another one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't wait to meet them when you do, because that'll be lovely. You'll have to bring some photos into the podcast, show everybody. Yes. Well, thank you for joining us this week for our first episode back of 2026. All the articles that have inspired this conversation are in the show notes. And don't forget to rate and review after you've listened. Subscribe so that you don't miss another episode, and pass this along to someone that you think would enjoy listening or watching, because you can find Frequency on YouTube as well. Thank you to Poet Ali for contributing the music to the show. And we're back every Monday with more news, insights and opinions about everything comms and leadership in workplaces today. Keep tuning in and turning up.